right, you're very welcome to Malaprops this Sunday afternoon. And I am so grateful that you're here. You chose to come and support four wonderful poets. My work is very simple. I am going to read the four bios, just a brief part. These poets are larger than life and larger than the bios I have, but I want to get out of the way so that they have enough time to read their poetry and also say more that's not captured on the bio. So the first reader is going to be Lesley, and she's the poetry editor of Shenandoah and the author of Michael Karetnick, her sixth poetry collection, and runner-up for the Desert Prize. Her other books include the hybrid memoir, Poetry's Possible Worlds, and the novel Unbecoming. Wheeler's work has received support from the Fulbright Foundation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, Red Loaf Environmental Writers Workshop, and the SWWIM Writers Workshop. Her poems and essays have appeared in Poetry, Poets and Writers, Kenyon Review Online, Guanaca, and elsewhere. And the second reader is going to be Brit Washburn. She is the author of the essay collection Home Again, Attempts on a Life of Poetry and Purpose, which came out of Alexandria Quarterly Press, 2023, and the poetry collections Notwithstanding and What is Given, which we are celebrating today, both from Wet Cement Press. Brit is the mother of four, serves as associate editor for the New River, and divides her time between Asheville, NC, and Blacksburg, Virginia, where she studies and teaches at Virginia Tech. Our third reader is Ed Falco, and he is the author of a dozen books, including novels, short story collections, and poetry collections. His most recent is the poetry collection X in the Tick Seed, which came out of LSU 2024. A recipient of the Robert Penn Warren Prize in Poetry from the Southern Review, Ed lives in Blacksburg, Virginia, where he taught for many years in the MFA Creative Writing program at Virginia Tech. Since retiring, he has started a podcast titled Ed Falco on the Air, where he's attempting to reinvent the serialized novel for the podcast age. And our last reader is going to be Jen Karetnick. She is a 2024 National Poetry Series finalist and the author of 12 collections of poetry, including Inheritance with a High Error Rate, which was published in January 2024, and winner of the 2022 Cider Press Review Book Award. Forthcoming books include What Forges Us Still, the Judge Judy Poems, and Domiciliary, which is coming out of the Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. She is the co-founder and managing editor of SWWIM Every and has recent or forthcoming work in Atlanta Review, Pleiades, Shenandoah, South Dakota Review, Verse Daily, and elsewhere. So without taking more time, let us welcome Lesley Wheeler to share her poetry with us.
Thank you so much, Mildred, and thank you to Stephanie and everybody else here at this fabulous independent bookstore. I read in the virtual reading series after I published a last book of poems, The State She's in March 2020, which was not the best launch date. But Mildred very kindly welcomed me into the virtual series, which she was running from here. And it's so wonderful to be here in person and to be reading with such wonderful poets. So thank you all. My brand new book is called Microcosmic. You'll see it has a giant mushroom on the cover, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. I had no idea that mushrooms were such a theme in Asheville, but I wandered around yesterday and bought myself all kinds of mushroom-related outfits and earrings and paraphernalia, so I'm delighted. I'm going to read the first two poems in the book and then tell you a little bit, because they're really different, tell you how, at least in my mind, they connect. The first one is, I think of as a kind of convocation. And it's one of those poems where the title runs into the first line, and if it sounds a little bit like the beginning of David Bowie's Heroes, you're not wrong. We could be mycelial, eating toxins together, decomposing what's still indigestible about this place, the singed taste, could spread our soiled hands wide, vegetate, infiltrate, collaborate. Below ground, we could grow fat on loss, bust out in the wildest shapes, puffball, flagellate, our mistakes gorgeous in dispersal across polluted skies. Help me try. Extended release. The oxy hardly works at all. The refrigerator rings like a telephone. I hold her hand as another non-healer unwraps and anoints her flaming sores. Sores isn't right. They're craters or portals she keeps slipping through. Hospital, rehab, hospital, home. The visiting nurse, with whom I've fallen in love, whispers to my mother, "You're so strong." She's too tired to laugh. And to me, "You're doing a good job." I could weep, but I don't. My mother keeps yelling into the landline, "Somebody's at the door." I trash sour milk and a rotting pepper from the bottom drawer. She points at the ceiling whirlpools and asks, "What do you think I'll wear up there?" I dress her in a clean fleece nightgown. She feels so cold. Soon she can't lift her bruised hands. I call 911. When she opens her eyes to the EMT, she cries, "Oh, Les, what have you done?" Each new doctor halts the prayer of oxycodone. I should have brought pills, but I won't know how to daughter till I'm done. I swear that refrigerator's haunted. I'm writing this poem I'll never be able to read aloud after another transfer. "Can I have a bed?" she says, while lying in one. She's in quarantine, but I hear she's refusing Ensure and those tiny cubed beaches, tender as blisters. She always thought people had a right to end their suffering. She never believed in heaven. "But I'm not going to that other," she tells me, raising the skin where her eyebrows would have been. "What's your favorite place?" she asks. I smell the ringing edge of the ocean. Hers is a garden. "But there can be a garden near a beach," I say, "full of tropical flowers. We can be neighbors." She might smile under palm fronds there, lit by hibiscus, full-bellied and finally warm. So my mother died in April 2021, and I was writing poems processing that, or trying to. I imagine a lot of you know that mother loss is a hard thing. And at the same time, I was reading about the Wood Wide Web and getting fascinated by the idea of mycelium, the organism from which mushrooms occasionally sprout. So sort of a cult being that helps plant life communicate, and you know, without which our world would not thrive. And I got to the point where I'm trying to put the book together, and I'm thinking about, you know, I have poems about grief and the things that happen in your life after that kind of a loss. And then I have all these poems about fungus and what do these things have to do with each other? And until finally the epiphany came that without fungus, death would overwhelm the world, right? It evolved to break down lignans and turn all kinds of beings that were tough and indigestible to digest them and turn them into nourishment and build the soil. So, you know, not out of altruism, they benefit from that too, but realizing that, I realized that fungus was a kind of muse for how I might metabolize grief. And so those things kind of came together. And in fact, there is what I'm calling an underpoem that runs consecutively across the bottom of every page all through the book. A verse essay that was pretty much the last thing I wrote to pull the book together. As far as the weird things that happen to you after a loss, one of the things I had no idea was going to happen is I started writing different kinds of poems. And I realized that was because even though My mother never had the privilege of a college education and was not a poetry reader. Otherwise, she read all of my books. And I hadn't realized how much that had shaped what I was willing to put to paper until suddenly there were new kinds of poems happened. This one is called Sex Talk, and it's an example of that. And it's about the most awkward conversation of my life, of course, with my mother. Maybe some of you know it references a Calvin Klein ad campaign with Brooke Shields, who happened to grow up a few towns over. Sex Talk. After a fight, men want to have sex, but I don't, my mother said. She glanced at undergraduate me from the driver's seat as if a membrane had been breached and asked, "Do you?" I wanted to change the subject. We were returning from the mall through the stony suburb where the model lived, the one who said, "Nothing comes between me and my Calvins," where the fire department floods the common every winter for skating, creating warty ice ungroomed by Zambonis, grass snagged in its skin like ingrown hairs. My mother kept looking at me, her eye a sideways question mark, tricky liquid liner painted along the lid, pupil unrelenting. Everyone in the family except my mother owned their own lockable room. She had to read her Harlequins out in the open like a gazelle. We stalked through, asking and asking, "Where is thee? Why can't I? Help me." Nightly, her shirtless husband arrived with a pump jar of Jergens, demanding she moisturize his back, scaly from chlorine. But I knew, spy crouching on the stairs, fingertips brushing wallpaper embossed with creamy trees, its surface all bubbles and seams, what he was after. Once at a modernism conference, a guy chased me around the canapes while lecturing me on Marianne Moore's asexuality. I knew my mother didn't like sex, but I never asked, was it generally or just sex with my father? Nothing gets between me and my shame. I don't know what Moore wanted, just that she wrote cryptic poems under her mother's surveillance. Heterosexual marriage, she too disliked it. She was nearly 60 when her mother died. Now I know death's intimacy, how honesty frightens me. My mother is everywhere, cells lodged in my body, invisible flakes of skin on sweaters, a baggie of ashes on the bookshelf. Not after a fight. Until adrenaline burns off, I'm hot the wrong way, clenched. I hope she knew what an orgasm feels like. During my first, a rainbow tree grew between me and my eyelids privately. She said to us over her book, "No, I don't want to hug you. Good night." So this is a poem that I thought, well, I'm writing it secretly, right? Like this is like, I don't necessarily want people to see this. And then I published it in a print magazine thinking, oh, that's fairly safe. And then it got picked up by Poetry Daily. So it's all over the internet. This one I'm reading in part because Jen Karetnick, who's reading later, is chose it along with the other fabulous editors at SWWIM magazine to be published there, and I'm very grateful. It's called Garden State. So again, New Jersey theme. A man in a suit approached and touched my arm. Would I pose in front of the merry-go-round? I was 13, free for an hour in the middle of Paramus Park Mall in America. I was America. The man was leading a tour. The tourists spoke no English. My English mother said, "Your sister is beautiful, but you are reasonably attractive." She chose my clothes that day, a blouse abuzz with flowers, a pink pleated skirt. "Yes," I said, and sat on the bench. Everybody smiled. My hair curled like orchid petals. A carousel horse whispered, "Why would they point their cameras at you, as if you were pretty?" "This will be a story," I replied, "of cold glass eyes that saw the bloom in me." So one of the things that during the pandemic, sort of the odder things, is that I became obsessed with tarot cards. I think it was because I am a compulsive planner and could not see anything ahead, and I don't know that I have had any success at divination over the years, but I found it to be a wonderful meditative practice to pull cards for myself. This one references some of them. It's called Flammable Almanac. I pick up the cards as a kind of game because the pages of my calendar are salt. A char-cloaked man who spilled 3 cups hunkers in me, unable to budge. The air smells like smoke. Put your toes in the water, Temperance says. I know you're discouraged, but the only way you will ever arrive is to get your feet wet. Bury bulbs, one day they will be lilies in your pocket. So I armor up and ride across a desert upside down, wand erect, so inflamed my horse is blushing. There may be nowhere to go, but I move fast and through and past summer, my hands learning the meanings as the meanings learn me. An ashy history flows into an egg yolk tomorrow. Autumn, I become the king of pentacles. Ivy climbs the ground, the chair, and fruits all over my clothes. When the psychic said, "Good things come to you through fire," I thought he meant my whole world had to burn. Now I know the fire reddens inside me, every paper window incandescent. I think I'm just going to end here with a poem called Return Path. This is one of those poems that didn't work until I found the right form, and it's a villanelle, but I like to call it a dirty villanelle because it doesn't obey the form very perfectly, but there's also a lot of dirt in it. Thank you all so much. Again, such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for all of you who might be tuning in from far away. Return Path. The only way to pray is through my feet, earthward, jolted in return by the fizz of a spiking current. I never thought a circuit would loop through me, believed I was separate, alone, done with gods. But here it is. I found a way to pray. Through my feet, I reach down. There's something animate, mycelial, that touches me back. It's a species of love, a thinking spike, a zinging circuit of energy and dirt, blood and spirit, plutonic conversation, mostly wordless. The way I found to pray is through my feet, soul bared to wooden boards or rug or slate or buggy grass, just as you want to press skin to a beloved's, sparking a current, a circuit. Not that Earth loves me exactly, matters what matters. She wants me to return the mess of my only body, pray from head through feet as I sink unthinking ash into love's circuit. Thank you.
Does it sound okay? Thank you, Lesley, for that lovely reading. I'm so grateful to be here today with you and Jen and Ed. Thank you, Mildred and Stephanie and Malaprops. Like Lesley, I read here in this series for my last book in January of 2020, before everything changed. And I think one of the things I appreciated about that was just that it allowed me to start writing again immediately. And so the oldest poems in this new collection date from right around then, right around March of 2020. And in trying to decide what to read today, I was thinking, as I often do, about Pico Iyer's definition of poetry as an intimate letter to a stranger. And I think if I had to pick a single form, it would probably be the epistolary form. Sometimes I think that's all I write, and sometimes it's more camouflaged than others. This collection has an epigraph that also sort of takes that form from May Sarton. Dear love, I would have said, and to each bird who flew up from the wood, I would be gentler still if that I could, for on this Easter morning it would seem the softest footfall danger is extreme. And so I prayed to be less than the grass, and yet to feel the presence that might pass. I made a prayer. I heard the answer, wait, when all is so in peril, so delicate. Dear, the mornings are cool here, the light gray, but it warms throughout the day, and most afternoons, the sun appears. At the end of the road, there's a bank of lilacs in bloom. Out walking, I smell them as I round the bend and remember how furious my mother was when my father uprooted the bushes around our house on West Street. I never knew why, and should ask him or her while I still can, before the source of every rift becomes a mystery, and all we know is that it's there and permanent, a scar that never fades and seems instead to darken over time, though we've forgotten the injury and how it came to be. The distance between us growing like the length of the days, longer and longer until, before we know it, it's late evening and we've yet to eat, yet to call the children in, gather the laundry from the line, water the garden, pause to take a drink from the hose, taste the mineral bittersweet of the well, as though it were a fountain that could turn back the hours, the years, so that we might do it all over again, more carefully, pay closer attention. I hope this finds you holding up, enjoying the spring where you are, the return of birds and greens and all things prodigal, prodigious. Take good care and love always. The radical hospitality of the senses. They beckon. The light on the low bookshelf at dawn, the sound of mocking birds greeting the day, the smell of bread toasting, warming the house, where the morning air feels cool and the first sip of water tastes of kindness. Notice us, they seem to beg. Come to us, and we will save you from yourself, that black hole in your head where ghost thoughts taunt the cowering child. They promise you are safe. They do not deceive you, even as they dull with age, blur, fade. Still, they will bring you back to the world where you belong. Gracious hosts saying, here, come in, stay. Please, have a seat. Let us get you a drink, a bite to eat. You must be weary. Put up your feet. Tell us of your journey. We're listening. Sorry, I don't really have any banter for you, but a few more poems. Saturday, mid-spring and rain. So I start laundry, set my daughter up to paint at the dining room table, fry potatoes and onions for lunch. bake cookies while her brothers watch a movie. When the rain stops, we go out and turn the last of the raised beds. Sow seeds she chose weeks ago and has been eager to plant. Blue boy bachelor's buttons, zinnia, chamomile. Such pretty pictures on the packets, though I tell her we can't be sure which we'll actually take. Before dinner, I walk to the lake where the dogwood blossoms are at their peak, and an enormous osprey is putting on a show. Sky dancing, I've heard it called, then plunging feet first to seize what he's seen, screeching as he emerges, a fish, a thrash in his talons. In bed, I read to her from the Chamber of Secrets, then to myself, a piece on field guides, how what begins with naming becomes about relationship, attention, the beginning of devotion, and the end, I cannot fathom. Getting by. I have chopped pistachios left over from a wedding cake I made last month, arugula from yesterday's salad, lemons for the cold I've been fighting. And I am trying to remember the recipe for the Sicilian spaghetti my mother made for me once when she came to visit my apartment on Chestnut Street, the one in the Jefferson Building, red brick with arched windows, flower boxes, which used to be some sort of institution where I lived for 6 months between men who had begged me to come, then insisted I go. It had a little terrace with French doors that opened out onto a church parking lot with a view of a cross that glowed in the night like certain thoughts that kept me up. It had red pepper flakes and lots of olive oil, tasted bright and bitter, and is what I'm craving now, because it is what can be made with the ingredients on hand. I think I have just 3 more short poems. From here, I don't know when I will see you again, but it won't be soon enough. Likely, spring will have passed with its pale greens and newness, its buds and soft air. Likely, summer will have come, thrumming and insistent, neither of our favorite times of year. But I will take what I can get. We are all at the mercy of the calendar, the clock, the current carrying us forward in its blue blur. This morning, I woke and forgot for a moment you would not be beside me when I opened my eyes. How far away you are now. On our walk this afternoon, Mara picked 2 dandelions gone to seed, gave me one, and told me to make a wish. This world needs so many things, but all I want is for you to survive another season. There must be a way to get there from here. Some poems are intimate letters to strangers, some are to our mothers, like that one. My mother's here today. How persimmons. A dear friend is painting the door of her studio to be a room of her own at long last, after years of endless longing. It is laid out on sawhorses, the door, a deep persimmon that will require several coats. She sends me a snapshot of her work in progress, brush in hand, and I am reminded of another friend, how persimmons were among the last foods she could stomach, overripe and abundant on a neighbor's tree, unwanted by anyone else, but she could not get enough of them. Their pulpy sweetness, their taut skin, something that did not make her sick when everything else did. I took her bowl after bowlful, left them outside her door, not wanting to wake her, not wanting to find her already gone, as she is now, unlike us, who must keep calling our desires into existence, their colors rich and vivid and saturated. And I'll end with one that wasn't on my original list. I have just a couple more minutes, but we had a lovely lunch a little while ago, and Art, a new poet friend in the audience, made mention of Jim Harrison, and I never pass up an opportunity to pay homage to Jim, and I have a poem that is after Jim Harrison. To remember you're alive. To remember you're alive, take a walk in the rain with a married man, another poet, your close friend, while your own love is far, your children asleep in their beds, through the town where you were married a quarter century before. Gaze into the fog hovering over the lake, its surface shivering when the rain touches it, an eagle with a fish lifting off, a lone duck drifting. Sit under the picnic shelter, talk of books, frustrations, aging, your parents, your own, your children's coming of age, the ache of it. Let his devotion make you admire him more. When you say goodbye, embrace, linger, feel his lips graze your cheek, yours, his. Drive home listening to a Scottish ballad on the classical station, joy for the one you love. Don't speed. Focus on the road. Know that at any moment, one of the semis barreling toward you could hydroplane, lose control. When you get back, make pancakes, eggs, sip black coffee, lick syrup from your fingertips, send your love a flare. Tell him you can't wait for his return. Thank you. Next up, the one and only Ed Falco.
Thank you, Brit. Thanks to Mildred and Stephanie and the folks at Malaprops. Several of my good friends who made some time to come out. I really appreciate you coming out, and to all of you for being here. I'm going to read one poem from the earlier book, and then the rest will be from the new one, X in the tick seed. This one's called Meditation on Loss. One moment of meditation leads to sailing downstairs. First, there's the consideration of loss. Though she has metamorphosed into the young woman I love, the child I love is no longer here. Her hand wrapped around my 2 fingers as we walked along the beach. She turned light into water. Look, look, the sun is like a waterfall. Sunlight spilled to the ocean through a break in thick clouds. Such is the jolt of that memory, I have to stop a moment till it weakens, because I miss her and the years are falling away. I'm on a city street, Manhattan, midday summer. I'm sitting on a brownstone stoop with my hands over my eyes, and it's in that willed dark that the basement door opens and I start downstairs. Now I'm a child. That's my mother in our Brooklyn home, in the basement where I'm not allowed to go. She's putting a penny in the fuse box. The lights are out. I remember the darkness. I watch her from the top of the stairs as she pushes in the penny where the fuse is supposed to go. And then the blue flash, bright, solid blue, like a lightning strike, might look deep underwater. And then for a second, her hand is on fire. She flies away from me through the dark, lit up by a flame that envelops her hand before it's dark again. And I'm sailing down the stairs because the memory is partly what happened and partly the dream of it that recurred for many years. My mother's hand is on fire, and then it's not, and she's holding me in the dark. How strange is this world? My mother's flaming hand, the waterfall of the sun, the way the years flash past, and a moment never ends. This is, so a lot of these books are written from a kind of persona of X, which is unnamed and unidentified through the book. I'm going to start with some that are not X poems. This is called Girl on a Rooftop. Girl on a Brooklyn rooftop in moonlight, her waltz-length white nightgown flurried by gusts of wind off the East River. One foot rests on the head of a gargoyle. The boy watching from his bedroom window is still unsoiled by lust, greed, ambition, anger, or terror. He's a child who awoke one night and went to his bedroom window, where he saw a girl in a nightgown on his neighbor's rooftop the instant before she dropped to the sidewalk, her waltz-length white nightgown swooping ever after through moonlight. Fire season in the West feels like the whole country is burning. I'm tired all the time and sleep comes with great difficulty. Men are rousted out of bed, papers are demanded. The donkey in my neighbor's field screams as if being molested. Goldfinches slash yellow flames to the flashy pink petals of cherry tree. Refugees and their children are drowning. Sleep comes only with great difficulty. There must have been stories, though no one told me. A boy whose sensitivity worried his working class family. In memory, her hair is dark and riffled by the wind. Her gown is white against faint stars in a black background. A bright full moon gazing overhead. The blue slate sidewalk below her is out of sight. It's late, past midnight. The lights are out in my parents' bedroom. Though they wouldn't tell me, they must have known her story. She has become for me an image and a mystery. The way the world goes on daily in its brutal way, through gorgeous columns of light and shade. The executioner's children eat well and prosper. The murdered are felled and dropped and assume grotesque postures spilled along city streets or remote mountain valleys. While she remains always on the edge of that rooftop, looking out over night and the sleeping city, on the verge forever of falling off into the moonlight, like love and suffering, sorrow and beauty. couple of poems about mothers I've noticed. I'm gonna read this one too, is about some memories of my mom. The ruined garden. We counted the silence between breaths and waited. Soon, we were told, very soon. Her slivered body waited to stillness, her searching eyes blind. 4 of her 5 children in a circle around her, the girls holding her hands, the boys at her feet. What would we find could we step behind her shuttered eyes? A garden in summer, her husband at her side, holding a dirt-crusted trowel, and she with a flowering lily cupped in the palms of her outstretched hands. When I was still a boy, and the 2 of them would live forever. Sun bright on our green, precisely mown lawn, the bright array of their tenderly attended garden, the henned chicks, the bleeding hearts, purple salvia, ornamental grasses, angel's breath, and row upon row of marigolds, zinnias, daylilies, and more than I can remember. And this, the morning I helped her plant a row of bright red flowers, poppies maybe, delicate red petals and black center, a child in my mother's arms. After the sky darkened and clouds tumbled over roofs, then thunder, lightning, screeching wind, an outburst of hail, and I cried for the morning's work lost, the garden ruined, the red petals stripped, the plants beaten to the ground. Her lips at my ear, whispering to her child, there's no need for tears. Everything's only beautiful for a little while. Most of my poems are a kind of mix of fiction and experience, reality and imagination and invention. But this one's pretty literal. It comes from, you'll hear it in the poem. It's called In the Kentucky Mountains. In the Kentucky Mountains, this is where I came around a curve, found black water pooled, where the road dipped, blacktop disappeared. The moon rose, its pale white reflection flashing on the surface of the water. This is where I tried to drive through water, only to discover its depths. My car floating seaworthy as a boat before water found its way through, dark and cold and quickly rising. Above the dashboard, to the windows. This is where my car turned a slow circle under fast-moving clouds, where I rolled down my window, climbed onto the roof, where I waited wet and cold, surrounded by mountains and woods. I thought myself fully alone, marooned and slowly sinking. When I fell back to see the stars overhead blink between clouds, the moon peak and disappear, black water rush to the tree line. Before 3 swinging lights appeared, as if among the constellations, before they turned out to be oil lanterns descending a steep hillside, the gait of those who carried them, measuring their sweep and swing. Before a family who lived in a nearby cabin threw me a braided rope, before they hauled me out of water onto the blacktop road, before they swaddled me in a coarse blanket and took me into their home. This is where they fed me hot milk and honey, found me dry clothes, where they made me a pallet, and this is where I slept the long night before they drove me to town on a morning streaming bright sunlight. This is where we live, in just such a world, this too. And I think I'll finish up with 2 of the X poems that give the book its title. They're kind of a sequence going through this character X's life toward getting to the end of it. The first is X in Music. X in Music, first jazz. X's big brother, musician, a drummer, drum set taking up 2/3 of his bedroom. He played along to jazz and the big bands, Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington, Count Basie. He loved Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday. X, still a kid, listening on the other side of the bedroom wall. Then folk, Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, Joan Baez, Phil Oakes. Graduating to the blues, John Lee Hooker, Leadbelly, Howlin' Wolf, and on to the great jazz masters, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, Bird. Thereafter, an eclectic mix, leaning always toward jazz, Roland Kirk, the great Wayne Shorter, the indomitable Charles Lloyd, but also Frank Zappa. And all along, the subtle music of words, from Emily Dickinson to Ted Ruthke, from Shakespeare to Mamet, the song of language arraigned as music, in the end, X's great love. So many singers, so many songs, in every language, every medium, every culture, voices raised in celebration, sorrow, joy, grief, love, fear, always, even with death at the door, singing. And finally, X in the Seasons. 1, X from his teens through his 30s. Yes to spring's reckless slash of color, and yes to summer's heat and the shameless swaths of flowers wanton preening. Yes to fall's bright death announcements scattered everywhere, even to winter's white fist battering locked doors. Yes, bring it all, bring it. X revels in the season's provocations, in blazing heat and body-numbing cold. 2, X from his 40s through his 60s. X is still in love with the world, but often now he worries. Time moves like a magician, getting from here to there faster than can reasonably be possible. It makes no sense how fast time goes, pulling the hesitant body along without consent, dragging it mumbling through each swift season, as if X is cannonballing in free fall through time. 3, X in his 70s. Yes, again, because it's clear there's nothing anywhere to grasp, nothing to break winter's grip. Never has been anything to slow the turning after luxuriant summer's impulsive heat, to hold off winter's final push before it all begins again, though in the beginning again is the spectacle and the marvel, fiery as ever. So yes, he'll speak in wild favor and go out testifying. Thank you.
I need to come up. Perfect. For the short people. I just want to start by saying I won't be reading any poems about mothers. So we're done. We're done with that subject. Thank you so much to Mildred and Stephanie and Malaprops. I too read during the pandemic with my unfortunately born pandemic baby. So it's a real pleasure to be here in North Carolina. I'm going to start with the first poem in the book. And this is a true story. I commiserate with a pygmy octopus found in the Miami Beach parking garage. First time, I get it. It's inevitable to cling to cement like forgotten spaghetti in the bottom of the pot. Bottom dwellers, holders of the smallest hopes. We have so much in common. Always it's a rude awakening to find yourself flush on the floor under the neon glare of a super fever moon. The surging sea and near distance, that uterine shed of toxic algae, the sick room stink sweeping in long before the scarlet feathered dawn, pushing you into a place you never thought you would go. All three of your hearts were born to know what dying is, but this is different. Only air beats through your gills to replace their copper charges. Canary in the coal mine of climate change, marine biologists call you. Expect more sea creatures in dry spaces. Twitter sends recipes, sarcasm. This is from the city that brought the world's shark on the metro rail. Is it running for mayor? Harbinger or hoax, but alive when security scoops you into a bucket of salt water and deposits you home. The question is not, how long can you survive out of the ocean, but why should we have to see your blood to know how blue it runs? He survived, you don't have to worry, and we didn't eat him. Much of this book is set on the mango grove that I lived on for 20 years and harvested, and which we sold right before the pandemic, which sounds very romantic and is really not. It was a lot of work. Michael Heddick, who comes from South Florida, visited me on that grove more than a few times to get mangoes and have parties. It was fun until it wasn't. And this book is largely about leaving it, a place I really loved, but couldn't take care of anymore. This is the title poem. Mango, an inheritance with a high error rate. The slick gush of you, the stain and stick of you. How you fill cheeks like the residue of a tongue bitten nearly in two. The way you linger in the air with the fleetest of flies, no one can catch, except with leftover wine rotting in wide-mouthed glasses, along with the lead points of bodies I collect like coins, until the liquid chokes with them. This is about how I've loved you for so long, I've grown weary of you. Fragrant wild grenades percussing through the night onto the shards of the pool deck, pinging off drain pipes and catching in gutters, splattering the slats of the solar panels with such force that I sleep dreaming of ancestral dangers. And all the abundance you beget, the family members who clamor for you and bring back breads and chutneys and salsas made too saccharine with you, dishes to spoil in the back of the refrigerator. And your pits that root themselves in oolite and silt from squirrel knot fruit, thrusting up seedlings when no one is looking that might or might not bear if allowed to grow, but will be considered new varieties if you do. Those genes throwbacks to every Asian, Latin, and Caribbean tree that contributed to your lineages. And those who will name you, guess again, rename you. And the food pantries that won't take you, even though you are fresh, unprocessed, because this is no longer how America embraces anything in your colorful, foreign-born skins. I think this is not a mango poem, but a poem about aging, I guess, and also about the superficiality of Miami, which is a place I really love, but also recognize for what it is. My hairstylist is a man who loves the shape of a woman's skull, its petite cliffs and canyons that he hikes with his agile fingers, the dips and curves in the road of a scalp that he reads like a triptych. Otherwise indifferent, his Gucci model face set as if for a permanent advertisement. He converses only with the Italian men, whose hair he trims in between foiling and painting away my personality, turning me as platinum and beach wave as every other woman in Miami. He envisions me even less visibly than I view myself, I think, until we go to the sink. And I lean back in the chair while he rocks and cradles my head in his palms, the size of saucers, supporting my occipital bone like a lizard caught to take outside, turning me this way and that under the faucet, exploring the only part of my aging body that interests him, my drenched and gleaming skull, showing off its faulty crevices and divots like a landscape, or perhaps an archaeological excavation, ancient and revelatory, perpetually in danger of collapse. This is probably another mango poem, but it's more about other things, as you'll hear. It has another running title, so. It's about the dog, but not really about the dog, which is why I continue to cry at odd moments, popping up in my day like advertisements on social media, several weeks after we found her dead in her crate. a cold log of dachshund. The other two dogs who had slept there with her for 14 years, eager to scramble out and pee on the fallen toast of palm fronds outside, come back in to crunch kibble and take another nap, do all the normal dog things that they do, as if they didn't notice anything wrong. It's about how they knew, having curled around her body, sinking into that foreign place all night, but also about how they really didn't know or want to understand, how they looked up at me every time I walked in the door, my arms empty of her, then settled their heads on their paws with a single mutual sigh, and gave her plot on the cushion the girth of a large belt. Or it's about how I project these feelings onto them, the loss, the space, the childhood she had in her comedian's body of both of my kids, and the length of time that we lived in this house that we can now clean of her traces to put on the market for a family with babies and different kinds of pets, who want an acre of yard with too many mango trees and scenery that Facebook identifies as India instead of Miami. It's about the mangoes, which the dachshund scavenged for only one season and inexplicably never ate again, but also not really about the mangoes, which I don't have the energy to gather anymore. She preferred the half-rotten avocados anyway, sneaking over to the pair of trees marking the property line by the fence every time I let all three dogs out at night, coming back with a mottled shell of fruit in her snout, or the sugary sapodillas, brown as rats, rooting like a pig in the brush as if for truffles. It's about this nest, but really also not about this nest, emptying, though not vacant yet, built by a raptor, though I am now a sparrow, or whatever kind of bird a bird of prey hunts. But I recall that raptor, how I still want to eagle the sky and look down on the world the way I did when I felt it owed me something enormous that I didn't have to earn or catalog, or think about the day I would have to downsize it away. Let's see, my Miami water bottle. I'm going to finish with two newer pieces, one that's coming out in 2026, and then one that's from my new collection. That's about, well, I'll tell you in a sec. During the pandemic, I challenged myself to write 26 abecedarians and 26 beautiful outlaws. And that's the next book coming out. And it was a good challenge because it certainly kept me occupied. I probably wrote like 36 and 36. And these are the ones that made it. And there was a third part of the book that didn't make it into the book. And this is from that part. But I truly like this poem. The opossum is a marsupial zombie, stumbling under the slog of sun, stealthy in spirit with the moon. We never minded them nesting under the deck or snoozing in the mondo grass, even though we sometimes had to wrest them from our dogs, stiff and drooling the way they are when scared, bowels emptied, eyes and mouth open as a contemporary floor plan, the tonic immobility as complete as it is involuntary. Still, we made a mistake in the recent past. Believing one truly dead, we grabbed her tangle of babies from her pouch, despite knowing we would have to raise this cluster of snouts on ticks and palmetto bugs. But post-removal, hours later, she was gone. Possums can be injured, bones broken in this dreaming state, but we only stole what was rightfully hers, our hands in her insensate womb, generation of liberators signaling virtue, rescuing what had been doing fine without us. And my latest manuscript, which is out there making the rounds, is about organs. In, I guess it was 2023. I don't know, how many of you have been watching The Pit? If you have, you've seen there's one scene where they're always looking for O-negative blood. My son has O-negative blood and he's been a blood donor throughout the years. But about a year and a half ago, he donated his kidney to a friend of his who really needed it. And I just admired that so much that I started thinking about kidneys and brains and hearts and all of the language that our organs speak to ourselves and to each other. And this is the first poem from that book. It's called The Making of What's Left. Now that he is losing it, those handfuls of fine strands in his palm like pocket lint, my son asks me to teach him to style his hair, how to use a brush to straighten the curls instead of flattening them, like the rounds of dough he learned to fry with scallions while traveling in Asia. Now that he's losing it, the 5-year girlfriend gone, as if she had never been. 4-year college done, the 2-year job in Austin to begin, the dermatologist confirming the fine strands in his palm, like pocket lint, is male pattern balding, and that tests have revealed that autoimmune disease lies in wait for him as it did for me at that age. My son asks me, teach me to style the cowlicks that warp his part, commas on his forehead, the way my older brothers did, who is forever younger than me now. His hair a brush that grows straight into earth. My brother was my son's godfather, but even that didn't heal what was wrong between us. We were too much alike, from the hair that needed brushes to straighten, to the comorbidities we both had to track like animal scat through our blood. My son holds the hairdryer as if it is his ex-girlfriend. I teach him to style from a left part, the same side from where his kidney will be taken, for his childhood friend undergoing dialysis. The fine strands in his body filtered as if for lint 3 times every week. Universal donor, my son is scanned, probed, screened, finding out how to value his imperfect body, now that he is giving away a handful of it. Thank you so much. What a privilege to be here.
Let's have another round of applause to Jen. Karetnick. Thank you, Lesley Wheeler. Thank you, Brit Washburn, and thank you, Ed Falco. And thank you, everybody, for being with us. And this is the time when you can proceed to the counter and get the books. And I will also be happy to see you again on June 1st for the next group of poets. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
This is the mission.